I mean, sure, you can mix, but you gotta clean your room first.
Welcome to MixPosition.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to MixPosition episode number 2. My name is Travis Ham and I own Ham Audio. Today we're talking about all things live sound. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. And if you want to stay up to date on every video that we release, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that notification bell so you know when we release new videos. Also check us out on all of our social media platforms. Links will be here on the screen as well as in the description below. Let's get started with episode 2. All right, so if you watched episode 1, you know that we talked a lot about getting all your cables and all your inventory organized and together so that you know what you have to use. Today we're gonna talk about keeping your console and your mixing area clean, because when things are clean, we can do our job much more efficiently and get less frazzled in the process. So I'm gonna show you a little bit how to do that. All right, so we're gonna take a look at our front of house console and I'll show you what I mean by keeping things clean. Okay, so you may not be able to see all of this very well, but I'm at least gonna talk you through what I mean whenever I say keeping my console clean. When I refer to that, I typically mean keeping everything patched 1 to 1. That means whatever input number 1 is at your stage box, whatever other gear you have going between your stage and your console, channel number 1 always comes to channel number 1 on the console. Same thing with 1 through 72 or 128 or however many channels you have on your console. Keeping things clean like this ensures that your workflow all the way from your stage back to your console is the same. So if you need to troubleshoot or you need to find a problem, you know quickly where to look. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of my one-to-one patching here. I'll always start with drums with the kick and channel 1. We have 2 kick mics here. So we have a kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, hi-hat mic, tom 1, tom 2. I have an SPDX pad on stage. And then we have our 2 overhead mics. From there, I move into bass, synth bass. We have 3 stereo electric pairs and then 2 acoustic lines. So I have all of my guitars together, drums, bass, guitars. I move on to keys. Right now we have 4 channels set aside for 2 stereo pairs of keys. After that, I have all vocal mics, all handhelds, any kind of wireless or vocal mic you have on stage, it's all right there together. And from there, we move on to tracks. So we run tracks here and it's split out over 16 channels coming from Pro Tools. So we have our click channel, our count, which has the 1, 2, 3, 4 plus song cues and guide cues for parts of the song. Loop, which is everything percussion, synth drums, or anything like that. We have more channels that just basically split out all of the other instruments coming out of Pro Tools so that we have more control over that. Again, all of my tracks are together in 2 banks of faders. From there, we move on to our crowd mics, which are only used for in-ears. And if I decide to multi-track something, I can feed those into my mix later on. And then we have a second snare set up to the side of the drum kit, and I added a couple channels for those. From there, we have all of our video content or any other auxiliary stuff that we might use. If you have iPod channels or use anything else to play Spotify, or you want to plug in a laptop or something like that, we stick all of that at the end. And then my very last channel is my talkback channel. The only reason why I have this on a channel itself is so that everybody has individual control in their ears of how loud I am when I'm speaking to them. Some people like to run their mixes louder than others, and so this ensures that they hear me at a volume that's comfortable for them. After that, my last 2 faders here are my stereo mix, and then we have a lobby feed that goes out to our main lobby that's feeding content from the auditorium that I send out from this mixing console. So that's a quick rundown of how I have my console laid out 1 to 1. And like I said, this matters because if I have a problem with something, I need to be able to trace it down quickly. And if I know that input 1 on the stage is patched to channel number 17, I might be chasing my tail a little bit or I might get really confused. Another reason why that's really good is that if you have another volunteer or you have another guy coming in to run sound at your venue, he can also quickly figure out and troubleshoot anything that might happen on stage, and he's not having to run around figuring out how you have everything patched and set up. So for this reason, it's really, really good to keep your patching clean on your console. Another thing I talk about when I say keeping a console clean is physically keeping it clean. Digital consoles and really any piece of gear that you run at front of house is very susceptible to damage via dust, dirt, or fluids, anything like that that might get inside the console. So it's very, very important to keep your console clean. So we dust it off regularly. We take a microfiber cloth, we wipe the entire console down. We have an electric blower that we use to blow the console out, get any dust or dirt out of these faders or any little pockets that you might see where buttons are. And then we wipe down everything and sanitize it just for cleanliness sake. The time we live in right now, that's very, very important to do. And so we want to be sure that we're considering not only the safety of our gear, but also the health of people who are running it. Okay, so if we move over from the console a little bit, something you'll notice about this area is that it's very void of things like drink cups or mints or children's toys or whatever else that you have laying around. The reason we do this too is because keeping our workspace clean actually helps us to have room to work if we need to put something here, or the visual aid of having cleanliness here actually helps us to think more clearly. If we're looking at an area that's very messy and there's stuff everywhere, likely it's gonna stress us out. And when we're doing our job, we need to be fully focused on our experience, on the concert, on the show, whatever it is that we're running, we wanna be sure that we are fully focused on that. And so eliminating as many distractions from back in your workspace as possible will help you to be able to do that. It seems like a really small thing, but I promise you, over time you will really notice how stress-free your life becomes, and you'll actually enjoy walking into a clean space. Think about it. If you tell your kids to clean their room and they don't do it, what does that do? Well, that probably gets you a little frustrated and probably stresses you out some because it's another thing to do. So same here, if you clean up your workspace here and you keep it clean, it creates a stress-free environment, or at least as much as possible, because we all know running shows can be stressful. So my point being is that when you look at a clean space, it generally makes you happy. It generally makes you a little more stress-free, and you can do a better job of focusing on the actual show that's happening on stage, and therefore get a better result out of your mix or out of the entire experience, the sonic quality of everything. When you're more focused on what you're doing, the show's just gonna be better in general. All right, so if you'll notice, we're actually at the stage now. And that's because I wanna talk about keeping the stage clean. It's also a super important part of your experience and making sure that things run smoothly. All right, so if you look at the stage, you'll notice that there's not a lot on here. And that's intentional. It's because we wanna keep the stage clean, free of distractions, free of tripping hazards, so that nobody gets hurt on stage, nothing causes a distraction, nothing disrupts the show or the service or whatever you have going on. So it's very, very important to keep your stage clean, both as a visual element and as a safety element. These things matter to the entire experience, and we want to think about the big picture, not just how things sound, sometimes about how things look. And I never thought I would say that as an audio engineer, but sometimes how things look is super important and can help connect somebody to how things sound. So having a clean stage is super important. When I talk about a clean stage, the other thing I think of is how clean does everything sound on stage, right? And so we think about things like drums are back there. We think about things like having amps on stage, things that just create a bunch of stage noise. If you have wedges, sometimes, those will always create a bunch of stage noise and things that you have to fight. And so being sure that everything that is going on sonically on stage is as clean as possible. Here's something to think about. When we talk about vocalists on stage, specifically in a church setting, mostly in a concert setting too, where we place vocalists on the stage actually really matters and can make a huge difference in how things sound. When we say we have a drum kit right here, well, think about the vocalists you have on stage. Who is the most powerful vocalist? Who might be holding back a little bit? And we want to think about those things when we're placing vocalists on stage too. We want to put the loudest person as the person closest to the drum kit, because cymbal bleed happens a lot in these vocal mics and things get real like super harsh, right? It's definitely something that people don't really like to hear, especially not us as audio engineers who are very, very particular about hearing things like that. So that's something that can really make a difference, is placing your weaker vocalists or those who don't sing as strongly or maybe hold back a little bit on the mic further away from the drums while keeping the stronger people closer to the drums. This, in the end, in the big picture of everything of your mix, will actually help clean up all that cymbal bleed. If we have somebody who's really talking like this, and we just have this loud like whoosh going on right behind them, what are we gonna hear? We're gonna hear cymbals, right? And we don't wanna hear that. We wanna hear the clarity of their voice and whatever they're singing, and that's what we want coming through the PA. So placing your vocalist while keeping in mind where all the stage noise is can actually help clean up your mix in the long run. Okay, so that's a little bit about stage noise from drums. What do we do with amps on stage? Sometimes having amps on stage isn't always ideal, and if we have the ability to do something about it, let's do something about it. Fix every problem that you can and just deal with the ones that you can't really do much about. So one really great tool, if you have the ability to put your amps in a separate storage closet or some other room that you have off to the side of the stage or maybe behind the stage in a back hallway, really great tool is this RADIAL SGI. It's got a transmitter and a receiver, and what this does is this can actually take your signal coming from the guitar's pedal board or whatever and transfer it over an XLR cable back to the amp, where you can plug the 1/4 inch right into the input on their amp, put a mic back there, run the mic cable back to your stage box or wherever your inputs go to, and boom, you've effectively gotten rid of an amp on stage while still keeping the signal of the amp true, right? And so you can still mic up an amp and have it be way away from the stage, and you get such a clean sound without having any of the crazy, like, loud or annoying stage noise that's coming from that amp. So this is actually a really, really cool tool to use. If you don't have your hands on one, I'm gonna put a link below in the description for one of these. Super, super helpful. Another thing I would recommend is talking to your guitar players if they play there on a regular basis. If they have a regular gig at the bar that you mix at, or they're your regular guitarist at church, I would highly recommend talking to them and see if they travel with any kind of digital rig like a Kemper that would allow them to completely eliminate the need for an amp. That keeps your signal so much cleaner. You still get the sound of the amp, you still get that tone that you want out of it, and it's very, very popular these days. If your guitarists aren't using them, I would encourage them to look into it, and it would be something that would be super helpful to your mix and the overall sonic quality of everything in the room. Last but not least, cable management. The thing that everybody loves, not everybody loves to do. So cable management is super important, like we talked about earlier, is keeping the stage clean and free of tripping hazards. Use a bunch of gaff tape. Please gaff tape down your cables on the stage, make them organized. I get all of my cables together that I can, XLR, DMX, whatever, and I will gaff tape power separately so that there's not any kind of interference going on there with XLR cables and it's not screwing up anything. But gaffing down your cables is super important, making clean cable paths. And then I'll also take it a step further and use some fluorescent gaff tape to mark some things that are maybe major traffic areas where it could be a tripping hazard, even if you have things gaff taped down. It really helps people who are going on and off the stage to be able to see where they're stepping so that they don't trip over anything. Gaff tape is super, super important. Everybody uses it, every show has it. Get yourself some and gaff down your cables, please. Guys, that's all I have for you for episode 2. Thank you so much for watching. Again, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, follow us on social media, check out hamaudio.com, and shoot me a message if you want to get to know me or have any questions. I'm always available. I'm always happy to answer. I'll see you guys in the next episode.